I study a protein which is associated to a serious disease called cystic fibrosis. It is a monogenetic disease, which means that one gene and one protein product is responsible for the phenotype. It has high mortality and morbidity, and the water and salt homeostasis of the patient are affected. At this moment, over 2,000 mutations are known in the gene, but there is one mutation which is the most frequent, is the deletion of the phenylalanine at position 508. And it is present in most of the patients. If the protein is mutated, then it doesn't reach its functional place in the cell, the cell membrane. So there is no chloride influx or efflux in the cell. And this also means that there is no water followed by the chloride. And for example, the most affected organ is the lung. And the liquid which covers our airways, therefore it's very concentrated, very thick, and therefore the lung and the airways cannot clear the dust, the bacteria, and the biggest problem is lung disease, like inflammation. And we would like to understand the process of the folding of this protein. How does it reach the plasma membrane? How does it work? And how the mutation affect these processes. Since if we understand this, we hopefully will be able to develop some drugs and the drugs, the aim of drug development to help the mutant protein out from the cell to the plasma membrane. A little bit in more detail, similar to other membrane protein, the CFTR is synthesized inside the cell in the ER. When it is correctly folded and matured, it goes to the plasma membrane. However, if there is a mutation, then there is in most cases, there is no correctly folded protein, and it is degraded. And therefore, we would like to develop correctors which helps the folding. However, even if you can push the mutant protein from the ER to the plasma membrane, or in some mutations, it goes to the plasma membrane, but it doesn't function there. So you also have to develop so-called potentiators which stimulate the function of the protein. At this moment, as you see, there are a couple of drug molecules called lumacafactor, ivacaftor, which are already used in the clinics, but basically they are not effective. Very, very small change in the patient can be observed. So therefore, we would like to understand these processes, but for this you need the knowledge of the structure and the movements of the protein during the function. The CFTR protein is an ATP binding cassette membrane protein. It has two large transmembrane domains and two nucleotide binding domains in the cytosol, and also a disordered regulatory domain. The phosphorylation of this regulatory domain is a prerequisite of the function, and then ATP binding to the nucleotide binding domains gauge the channel. So the channel opens and closes. The energy of the ATP binding and hydrolysis is not for the transport of the chloride. It will follow the constant electrochemical gradients. And the mutation, the most frequent delta 508 mutation, is in one of the nucleotide binding domains. And we would like to understand how the deletion of this amino acid leads to the altered function of the protein. Since proteins always have some motions in the cell and your body temperature, so you definitely have to observe the dynamics of the mutants compared to the wild type protein. So therefore, we perform molecular dynamics simulations, and we would like to compare the differences in motions. As you see, this is not a very trivial question. On the other hand, the mathematical tools are toys compared to your very complicated stuff what I see here today. So basically, we apply statistical and graph theory methods. We calculate the correlations of motions between all amino acid pairs, and we draw a graph based on the information whether correlation exists between the motions of two amino acids. We use the distance correlation coefficient developed by Gábor Székely, since this method can detect also nonlinear correlation, and it is really zero only in the case when there is no correlation between motions. And after that, we apply community analysis, and here I show you a simplified graph where the nodes are the communities and the edges are the sum of the correlation between amino acids in the given communities. So this is calculated from the motion of the wild type protein. This is from the mutant. And as you see, interaction between communities 3 and 4 were seriously decreased, and a new community can be observed in the mutant protein, and we hope that this is the source of the problem. And how can you test this? For example, you can rescue the protein not only by drugs, but in the laboratory you can introduce additional mutations additional to the original disease-causing mutation, and they can restore, in some cases, some of the mutation restore the stability of the protein. They are called rescue mutations, secondary site rescue mutations. And if we perform simulation with this, one of these, and also several other rescue mutants, we can observe the strengthening of the interaction between these communities. Of course, we would like to know the source of the atomic level changes. So if we see the structure of this domain, the colors are according to the communities. And here, as a sphere, you see those amino acids which exhibit the highest the highest number of shortest pathway going through these amino acids. So it means that these amino acids are those which mostly communicate the changes in one part of the protein to the other part. And these most of them are located in two loops which resides between two domains. This ones, which is a so-called beta subdomain, and this is the alpha helical subdomain, and this is one loop, and this is the other loop. And it was a very interesting observation that in the rescue mutant protein, these amino acids in these loops are not central anymore in the motion graph. And what is very interesting that there is also a rescue mutation in this loop, which rescue the protein at a small level. And we also know that there is a drug, a small molecule. It's not a drug since it cannot really bind very strongly to the protein, but interacts with the other loop and also helps the rescue of the protein. And very interesting, the two effect is additive in experiments. So we really think that at this moment we got very close to understand how the mutation, deletion of the phenylalanine here, is transmitted to other part of the protein. And hopefully we can identify a better drug binding site for further drug developments. However, we also aim to study this in the full-length protein. That would be very important. But it's a membrane protein. Its structure determination is very difficult. But due to the revolution in the cryo-EM microscopy, 1 year ago we got the full-length structure. I mean, somebody has the full-length structure of the protein. Unfortunately, it has many strange feature, what you see in the next slide. On the other hand, what I can show you that there is also unpublished structures for the same protein in the same state, but there are serious differences. So because of the serious differences, you don't really know which one to use, and there are a couple of problems. What is the problem? The problem is that this is an active chloride channel, but you don't see a pathway, a hole through the protein where a chloride ion can go through. The other thing is, here you see one of the ATP binding site, which is relatively open. Here you see an ATP binding site which is relatively close compared to each other. And experimentally, we know that the ATP binding at this site is very strong compared to the other site. The other site, the ATP is hydrolyzed in less than a second, and here there is no ATP hydrolysis, and you cannot wash away the ATP for half an hour. It sits there. So it means for us that if this site is open, it is then the ATP should bind to the protein strongly, stronger than the other side. My collaborators investigated this also with special molecular dynamics simulations. And because of the time, I just want to say that they recovered the potential mean force of the ATP binding, and they couldn't detect any difference between the ATP binding between the two sites. So most likely, the nucleotide binding domains should be more closed in the structure compared to the situation what was determined by cryo-electron microscopy. The other thing is we are looking for the channel. If there is no channel, what can we do? We perform molecular dynamics simulations, and we hope that we can observe openings. We perform 6 simulations, and we could observe opening in one of them. But as you see, here is the transmembrane domain, and as you see, most of the extracellular openings are not in the extracellular region, but in the membrane region, which means that these openings cannot happen in real, since the chloride cannot enter the hydrophobic layer of the membrane. So what we did, we remodeled a broken transmembrane helix observed in the cryo-EM structure based on the structure of a homologous protein. So basically we just removed this break, and therefore we arrived to another structure which is more capable for opening. What does it mean? We performed similarly 6 simulations. We could observe opening a chloride pathway in all of the simulations. And And the extracellular opening was all the time really in the extracellular space. So basically now I think that we have a rational structure which might exist in the cell membrane, a functional structure. And now we can continue our study on the full-length structure to learn what are the effects of mutations. And of course, this is a GPU day. We don't program GPU, we just use them. On the other hand, we have to struggle sometimes with the optimization since these simulations are pretty long, happens for 2-3 weeks. And if you can run it, let's say, twice faster, you gain weeks. Now, I'm pretty happy to have access to these NVIDIA cards in the Wigner, since they are really much faster, even compared to the Tesla what we have at the national infrastructure. And earlier they had Radeon cards, but I use GROMACS software for molecular dynamics, and for many reasons this is a pretty good choice. But for non-NVIDIA card you had to use the OpenCL, which exposes limitations in this software to the performance, and which is also important change in the last year that we got the newest version 2018. GROMACS was known earlier as benchmarking for CPUs. It is a CPU burning program. And in earlier version, only the long-range interactions between the atoms could be calculated on GPUs. The PME, the long-range interaction were CPU bound. And in the current version, they also moved out the PME to GPU. The limitation is that, while short-range interaction can be calculated on different GPUs, long-range interactions only on one GPUs, their decision behind the basis behind this decision most likely is that the long-range interactions should be communicated pretty frequently with pretty large data between GPUs, and that would be a big problem. And just summarize, with isolated nucleotide binding domains, I think that the experiments and the simulations really reveal the effect of mutations and how the rescue mutations and drug rescue works, and that really will help us to design more effective drugs. And we will continue our quest to understand how the mutation destroyed the protein in the context of the full-length structure and dynamics. And finally, I just would like to thank my experimental collaborators in Montreal. My colleagues worked really hard, and the head of the department and my former PI really have always good criticism. And of course, both the funding and the hardware are not negligible. Thank you very much for your attention.